of this, but is there anyone in the legislature kind of looking at this issue and kind of trying to take this on to kind of bridge the gap that you're talking about?
Oh, definitely. Well, I definitely want to say, Assembly Member Laura Friedman as chair of the Transportation Committee, and also Senator Lena Gonzalez as chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. Both of them have been leaders on this topic. Chair Friedman was very instrumental in leading the discussion last year for the $45 million for immediate emission reduction strategies. And Chair Gonzalez did an informational hearing, really trying to dig into kind of what are the issues, what are the barriers, what is it that we are currently doing, and what is it that we need to do in the future. And so they are very much on the forefront of this. I would also say the Problem Solvers Caucus with Assemblymember Cunningham, Senator Newman, Senator Hurtado. I'm going to stop naming people because I'm going to forget someone. But they have been very instrumental. I think Assemblymember Mays is there as well as well as others. But they have been instrumental, not just on this issue, but all issues, hence the name. But they're really digging into this, transportation, kind of clean transportation issue to make sure that we're putting all technologies on the table, and that, again, that we're looking for solutions that will give us meaningful and measurable benefits and outcomes today, as well as
And welcome again to another episode of Sacktown Talks. Today we're excited to be joined by Nicole Rice with the California Natural Gas Vehicle Coalition. Nicole, how's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's going well, Jared. Thanks for having me.
We always like to talk to guests, talk a little bit about your background. Kind of how did you end up in Sacramento, and kind of what was your, the start of your journey here?
Oh my gosh, that's a pretty long story, so I'm going to keep it short. How much time you got? No, I actually, I came to Sacramento as a fellow in the Senate Fellowship Program by way of law school. So I was headed to law school. I wanted to be a prosecutor, but then I had a back injury. Couldn't take the bar. Barely finished law school, not academically, but just physically. And then was just looking for something to do and remembered how much I loved government. And I thought there was a good nexus between the two. So applied for the fellowship program, got accepted to the Senate fellowship program. And that started my journey here. And since then, I've been in the legislature. I've been probably doing lobbying for over 20 years. And I've represented public clients, private industry, nonprofits, the like. Yeah.
So the fellowship program gets so much great publicity. People talk about it, love it. Kind of, can you give us some of your memories of being a fellow and kind of how it set you up to where you are today?
Oh, yeah. It was a great program. I constantly recommend people who are interested in getting into this world to go through the fellowship program. You get lots of mentoring. You get lots of support. They do such a great job with the academics and the experience. It's like the world's best internship program. But then the greatest part is that you come into, a legislative office as staff, and they put so much trust in you because of the background experience and, frankly, the weeding out of the candidates into the program. So you get lots of great exposure, meet all the, key people, and really get a wonderful experience. There's nothing like hands-on.
It's kind of like a fraternal organization. Like the fellows always stick together. They know.
Totally.
Are you still, I'm sure you still talk to people you were fellows with,
oh,
years
absolutely.
ago, right?
Oh, absolutely. And there's quite a few still around. You get a taste, and then, no one really intends to stay, but then here you are 20 years later.
So what office did you start in when you were a fellow?
I had the privilege of being in Senator Adam Schiff's office the year that he was running for Congress. He was chair of Judiciary Committee, and it was a blast.
Yeah, I bet. And, it's kind of interesting, right now we're seeing this kind of big turnover coming here in Sacramento. We have a bunch of members who've been here for 10 years or maybe some less. Now, we have 20, 30, some leaving. Some going to Congress, some doing other things. So it's kind of interesting seeing, this class kind of grow and move on and do different things. How has that been like, in your shoes, in your career, just kind of seeing people like Adam Schiff, some guy you just, started with, now he's on C-SPAN all the time. opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it makes like the State of the Union speeches and all those different types of things very interesting because I get a chance to like see all the alum from California in those pictures in Congress. But I sometimes I do envy the times where staff was here and the members were here for such a long time. It makes for good policy making, I think, to be able to have some time to spend here and really dig into issues because there is a learning curve for everyone, staff and the electeds alike. So I'm pleased that term limits are now allowing for a little bit longer time for people to stay here, and it certainly seems to be changing the way that we're talking about policy and the history that people have with issues.
Yeah. So kind of we always get this question a lot from staff is kind of how do you go from a staffer to a lobbyist, or how do you become a lobbyist? Kind of can you talk to us about how your transition from working into the building, kind of stepping out and kind of working in the private sector?
Yeah, well, I'd like to say, Jared, that there's some secret or magic sauce, but there really isn't. I think it has a lot to do about just really kind of thinking about what it is that you want to do, understanding your strengths and weaknesses. I often like to tell people there's kind of two different characters that go into whether you're going to be in the building or be outside the building. And it's very simple to explain. If you love the policy, if you're comfortable with staying in your role and in your seat, not really bouncing around talking to people all day, but really focused and digging into the issue, then, staff work and being in the building is probably a good, choice for you. But if you like to be out talking to people, having meetings, discussing your positions, advocating for, what your perspective is, then doing lobbying would be very beneficial because I'm never at my desk. If I'm at my desk, then that means I've spent, the wrong time doing the wrong things. So yeah, I think that's kind of where the crossroads is, and that seems to help people.
Yeah, that's interesting. And kind of, discussion wise, like, working for a member versus kind of focusing on a certain policy issue, like, over the time, different policy issues are hot.
Yes.
I remember back in the day, it was workers' comp reform. Green energy was the big thing now. And, I know really we haven't thought much except for COVID lately, but I'm sure, something here is bubbling. Homelessness, that's the top thing.
Yes.
So kind of what's your recommendation for staff, to kind of learning policy wise, is it okay to focus on an area, or is it better to be more of a generalist?
I think it all depends on, where you want to go from your career in the building. A lot of times, folks who are interested in particular policy area can then go out to a trade association or a nonprofit, and, really continue to dig in that issue. But, a lot of times contract lobbyists, you have an inch deep of knowledge on a variety of different things, and that seems to work for some folks. So I think it all depends on what you want to do. And it, only takes about a legislative session for you to really figure out what's working for you and what's not.
Exactly. So, now you're the president of the Natural Gas Vehicle Coalition. Kind of what drew you to that, and kind of what are some of the things you guys are working on right now?
Yeah. No, I think this is a very important issue. Our whole kind of climate change strategy is important, and the impact that it's having on communities that are in the most polluted areas along our transportation corridors and the like. And they tend to be the disadvantaged communities, low economic status, persons of color. And so, for myself, I, being a long-term Californian, I really wanted to be involved in this issue and really try to find, real meaningful solutions where we can mitigate our climate impacts, improve our air quality, but also do it in a way where people will be able to transition from the economy that we have today to the green economy and not get left behind. That's very important for me. Economic policies and making sure that those who are in disadvantaged communities have an opportunity to get into solid careers and have, stable economic futures is very important to me.
Right. Prior to kind of joining the coalition, did you have, I guess extensive background in kind of, transportation or I guess, alternative fuels, things like that?
Actually, no. I was at the California Manufacturers and Technology Association for 9 years. So I worked on labor and employment issues as well as workforce development. But I think it's my workforce development background and really kind of, again, looking at those populations that have not had, strong access to education, internships, work experience and the like, and helping to find ways to move those individuals at the time into higher paying career jobs in manufacturing really kind of focused me on, this need to, do more for Californians who are trying to improve their lifestyle and have a secure future.
Right. I guess, can you tell us a little more about the coalition? I guess, how long has it been around and kind of, how did it get started?
Yeah, so the coalition actually got started because when we first started talking about environmental policies and climate change, we were talking really about alternative transportation fuel like renewable natural gas. So things like compressed natural gas, liquefied natural gas, CNG, LNG trucks have been around for quite some time because that was the technology that California policymakers were looking at the beginning of this for all the beneficial reasons that we can talk about today. So the coalition has involved to represent engine manufacturers and other stakeholders in the manufacturing sector of the industry, as well as the fleet owners, the fuel providers, the utilities, everyone who's really kind of in this space. And the uniqueness about our coalition in California is that we focus on the transportation sector because, natural gas can be used as a fossil fuel for other energy sources as well as transportation fuel. So we really focus on the heavy duty and medium duty trucks to impact the transportation corridor.
Natural gas burns cleaner than fuel. We all know that. Kind of why isn't it more widespread or used right now? Why isn't it in the mix, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think, this whole discussion has been about a transition, right? And so it's, anything that's going to move us from the traditional diesel trucks that people are using today is going to cost money and time and effort, and you have to build out the infrastructure. So over the years, natural gas infrastructure, its production has increased. And as people find out more about the environmental benefits and the cost affordability of the technology, they want to move to, the next commercially available technology, which at this point is trucks powered by renewable natural gas. But in the middle of that conversation, we stopped talking about the policy, which is mitigating climate change and improving air quality, and started talking about a specific technology, which is electrification. And while that might have some benefit for us in the future, it's just currently not commercially available and not able to perform right now to the level that is needed for, the transportation needs of commercial goods movement and comparable with diesel. So our focus has moved from the policy and finding all tech neutral solutions to a specific technology solution. And I think that's what's hampering the deployment of renewable natural gas powered trucks in California.
Right. Right now we're looking at gas, $6 on its way to $7. Who knows how high it's going to go? What would a similar gallon of natural gas cost right now?
Well, it's definitely significantly cheaper. I mean, even diesel is at $6 now. So you're definitely going to get some cost savings there.
And as I understand, the efficiency is similar, right? You'll get the same, I guess, miles per gallon or whatever on natural gas versus diesel.
Exactly. Right? Yes. So it can replace a diesel truck at a 1-to-1 replacement rate. So what that means is that you're going to get the same kind of performance that you expect in your current diesel truck by switching to a renewable natural gas powered truck.
And so is natural gas zero in emission, or is it just slight, or what is the emission on natural gas?
So that's kind of a tricky question because a lot of times we're talking about tailpipe emission. And so that's where you get people talking about electrification or electric vehicles as being zero. But it's not just tailpipe. It's the full life cycle of the emissions. So you have to look at the source of the energy as well. And the great thing about natural gas powered trucks is that they are 90% cleaner than the diesel that's currently on the road. They can get you 100% reduction in emissions of diesel particulate matter because you're not running a diesel engine. The carbon intensity is very low. In fact, recent data released under the low carbon fuel standard has the natural gas fuel or natural gas that's produced under and measured under the low carbon fuel standard at a carbon negative number, minus 33.33. So that is a significant, indicator and data point in this discussion, because the state is talking about decarbonizing its transportation fuel. And right now, natural gas under the low carbon fuel standard is the only carbon neutral transportation fuel in California.
Wow. Is there a way to transition, I guess, current fleets to become natural gas, or do you have to buy a whole new vehicle?
Yes, you would have to buy a new vehicle with a new engine and the like to be able to switch over. But the good news is that this technology, because it's been in place and in use for such a long time, it's not as costly as some of the newer technology. For instance, and these numbers are a moving target with our supply chain challenges right now. But while you can buy a new diesel truck, like a Class 8 truck, maybe at like $100,000, so we're talking about significant investments here. You can buy a new, like a compressed natural gas CNG truck for about $120,000, $160,000. So there is a cost, increase, but it's not as significant as like looking at an electric truck where you're talking about $400,000 to $500,000 and even more for a hydrogen truck at this point.
Right. It's interesting what are the competitors? You have hydrogen out there, you have electric. Kind of, learning about hydrogen, it has lots of drawbacks, as the energy isn't anywhere. It takes a lot of energy to make it, and so forth. And electric it just hasn't got up to the scale of the commercial use, right? Like we have some buses out there which appear to be doing all right, but the Tesla. What is it? The truck, the semi, was promised 5 years ago. I guess it's, who knows when it's going to come out, but who knows how far they can go or how long they can go. But this is a solution we have, right here today. And kind of what is the adoption rate are you seeing out there? And is there anything, forcing some of these big trucking and commercial companies to, switch to a cleaner fuel or cleaner burning cars?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of motivations. I think with, fleet owners and operators, the first thing is their desire to really improve California's environmental footprint and improve their own environmental footprint. So there's a lot of internal motivation that's going on. But then you also have market signals that come from policy making. So, sending the right market signal that the investment that you're going to make in, $150,000 truck is actually going to be able to be utilized for its full life. So we have some policy indicators that, help and support that, but it's also incentive dollars. So a lot of this transition has been about incentives for the production, incentives for the infrastructure creation, incentives for the fuel purchase, and as well as the vehicle purchase. So unfortunately for our industry, a lot of those resources now are going towards this tech preference to support electric vehicles. And so we're seeing a lot of those incentives roll up around the state for other technology, like renewable natural gas powered trucks. So from our perspective, we have, over the last 20 plus years, built out the infrastructure that's now being supported and funded by private investment. We have the vehicles. They're there and they're available, taking into account the supply chain issue we're having right now. And we know that they can perform and people have experience with them, and it's very positive experience. So public and private fleets as well. So there's a lot of support out there now. So what we just really need is the policymakers to allow for these vehicles that are cleaner, like I said, than the diesel that's currently on the road, to be part of this transition at the initial, at today, so we can get the immediate results and emission reductions that we need.
Yeah, something you kind of talked about was kind of the transportation in these kind of poorer areas. That's kind of where a lot of this pollution happens. And we recently had Christina Garcia on. She kind of talked about her district and they had all the freeways going through it. The ports, you have all the trucks coming from the ports down. Have you guys done any studies on showing like how much like a switch from, diesel to natural gas could help communities like that and kind of, the impacts it would have in kind of helping clean the air and making those people, healthier and more vibrant?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of studies out there from a variety of different sources. Like the American Lung Association does a study every year. Once we've been talking about like climate change and decarbonization. So at the recent climate change summit that happened, I think it was last year. COVID makes all the years blend together. New reports coming out about needing to reduce methane emissions and things like that. So there's lots of numbers talking about hundreds of thousands in reductions in premature death and asthma-related hospital visits and, increases and, just from an economic perspective, because you would have fewer lost days from people being at home sick.
Right.
So there's a lot of data out there. I wouldn't be able to quote anything specific, but you can Google and you could find that there is data that shows the faster and the quicker that we reduce the emissions, then from these, toxic criteria and climate pollutants, then the quicker we will see those health benefits.
Was it like 10, 15 years ago? It seems like, we just heard about this natural gas boom and it just seems so plentiful. And then we just had like such an abundance of it everywhere. And then we just we're starting to tap into it. Kind of what's the status of kind of natural gas right now? Is it still very plentiful? And is this something that you could see that could power, I guess, our country cleanly and independently for a long time?
Oh, yes, definitely. So under California, we have the low carbon fuel standard that I talked about earlier. And that's really all about the capturing of methane because the state has, a statutory requirement to reduce methane emissions in the state because that is one of a significant greenhouse gas and a short-lived climate pollutant. And what that means is that while we talk a lot about carbon dioxide, methane actually goes into the atmosphere. It stays for a shorter period of time, but it does a significant more amount of damage than carbon dioxide. So, sorry, spam call. So the low carbon fuel standard is a way for us to prevent that flaring of the methane and use it for something positive by taking that carbon out of the atmosphere. You're taking out more than you're actually putting in by the use of RNG as a fuel type. So therefore, you're creating this significant environmental and climate impact and benefit. And the LCFS program actually helps to create that production of renewable natural gas. That program, along with SB 1383, which again is about targeting methane emission reductions in landfills and organic waste, really is helping to fuel the production. So there are predictions that we will have more than enough renewable natural gas to power our transportation sector in California in years in the future. And California, as we are a leader in everything, have become a leader in using that program, the structure of the LCFS in other states. So they're adopting it as effective and meaningful ways to reduce methane emissions as well.
Yes, because so there's natural gas you get from the ground, and I guess there's just renewable natural gas that you were just kind of talking about. Can you tell us a little bit more about what renewable natural gas is and I guess how it's made?
Yes. So simply, renewable natural gas is not a fossil fuel. So it doesn't come from a geologic process. It actually is produced from organic waste, a byproduct. That's part of like landfills, wastewater treatment, also dairies we were talking about.
Paris Ranch.
Yes, exactly. Forest management. So a lot of different sources. And so again, the benefit of this is that absent, a way that we could beneficially use these emissions,
Right.
they would just be flared into the atmosphere. And we already talked a little bit about how damaging that is to the environment. So we're taking a negative, really, and turning it into a positive and using it for transportation to be able to reduce our emissions there.
Right.
And so that's why our technology, these natural gas engines running on renewable natural gas as a fuel source, creates significant and immediate environmental benefits.
And I guess, is this renewable natural gas, I guess, cost feasible and scalable and everything?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Like I said, well, I probably didn't say this, but about 98% of the natural gas that's used in transportation sector now is renewable natural gas in California. So, yeah, can you imagine if we scale this out while we're at the beginning of this transition, as we move into electrification, we could significantly impact what's happening today, like almost immediately, like flipping a switch. Now, again, I don't want to paint the picture that you put a whole bunch of renewable natural gas powered trucks on the road and then the blue sky is going to open up, the birds are going to sing, and pollution's going to go away. Exactly. But it's what we can do today, because a lot of what we're talking about in this clean transportation strategy is about things that will have outcomes in the future.
Right. So I guess, what are we waiting for? Like, why aren't we doing this? Like, what's holding us back? It seems to be a pretty good solution. Kind of what's the deal?
We're asking the same questions, Jared. That's why we're here, and this is a good opportunity for a plug for CNGVC, because like I said, fleets and operators and owners and truck manufacturers, they know, they get it. And so, we need everyone's voice in this discussion. Again, California has turned, the policy objective of cleaning the air into this technology preference. And we're not, I want to make this clear. The coalition, my membership, many of them have been in this discussion for years, for decades.
Right.
And so we're not anti, zero emission or electric vehicles. That's not what this is about. We see this, again, as a transition to cleaner transportation fuel use. And so the question just is today, what is commercially available that we can scale up, that's in use, that's proven, that is comparable and comparable to the diesel trucks that are being operated today? That's the question that fleet owners are asking. They also need something that's affordable, that's flexible, that can go the long haul.
Right.
Because we're talking about, California is a big state. So we're moving goods through the state. And we all know what that was like when the goods were not plentiful.
We're still experiencing it. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So it's important that, people can make economic decisions with technology that they know will be able to perform.
Yeah. So there's been a big push for electric vehicles, right? And it gets consumers to buy, tax credits, things like that. Are similar things available for natural gas vehicles out there?
Yes, there are some incentives out there for natural gas, particularly like in the South Coast Air Quality Management District and the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Both of those districts received $45 million last year in a budget allocation that the governor and the legislature approved specifically to help support the deployment of low NOx, another word for natural gas trucks in those areas, because those are the areas of the state where we have extreme non-attainment. So those are federal requirements for clean air that have to be met. And we continuously miss those deadlines in those areas. And so the legislature and governor saw the wisdom of the argument that we needed to get cleaner trucks on the road. And frankly, we don't want diesel to be the default while everyone's waiting for electric vehicles.
Right.
If there's a cleaner technology out there that can improve the air quality and get all of the climate benefits that we just discussed, then like you said, What are we waiting for?
Right.
Let's do this.
It's funny. And I guess the other, hurdle is refueling stations, right? Electric cars have, charging spots that are coming up. If you have a Tesla, they're everywhere. If you don't, it's a little harder. What is it with the hydrogen?
Yes.
Few and far between.
Yes.
Very hard to do that. What's the state of natural gas refueling? And is it as simple? Can a gas station do both natural gas and regular gas? Is it a simple switch, or do you need specialized stations?
It's a little bit more than just flipping the switch, right. But absolutely, the infrastructure is available throughout the state of California, and it's being in fact it's being built upon and expanded every day. The interesting thing is though that a lot of the chargers that we're talking about for electrification and electric vehicles really are for passenger vehicles.
Right.
So the question is, can you find charging for, a Class 7, Class 8 truck? These are your big goods movements. And how long is it going to take? So the equivalent time to really are for passenger vehicles.
Right.
So the question is, can you find charging for, a Class 7, Class 8 truck? These are your big goods movements. And how long is it going to take? So the equivalent time to fuel your diesel vehicle as well as your natural gas is about the same. There isn't much difference in the time that it would take, where, in some instances, we're talking hours to charge the electric vehicle. And the fact is, time spent there, as I hear from fleet owners, is money wasted on the table. So again, our industry, because we have gone through what the electric truck and electric vehicle industry is going through and building out that infrastructure, building out that industry. So we're here. We have the infrastructure there. And as I said, that's being funded by the private sector now, not by state resources. So there is available fueling stations throughout California to be able to support renewable natural gas powered fleet.
It's kind of interesting. California is really focused on the production of energy. And creating a path towards being 100% renewable in the production of energy. But I guess one area we don't hear a lot of discussion about is transportation and the use of energy in transportation. And that's a large chunk of the greenhouse gas issues. Kind of what do you think California needs to do to kind of create a sustainable plan where we could do kind of like an SB 100 for transportation fuels?
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I think the first thing is, if we're talking about a strategy and a transition, as we talked about before, we really should be focused on performance-based standards. So again, it's going to look at the technology, what it can do, how it can perform, and what's, supporting it as far as this transition. And then it's going to prioritize those uses. So it's not just about what the technology can do, but also what are the environmental and air quality benefits. So that's really looking at, how you're going to perform, what benefits that you can provide, and then deploying that in comparison to, where we currently are today and what we're seeing today. So I think that's the biggest point. If you set the performance standard, as we are seeing with, the goals that are being set with the state regarding electric vehicles, the market will respond.
Right.
So, and it's an easy market signal for people to know, how we've been able to introduce these electric trucks, even though they're still very much in like pilot forms and things like that. But it's remarkable given the short period of time where we've come with, CNG trucks and how we've improved on those engines over the year is also remarkable.
Right.
The new Cummins 15-liter engine that's out there is incredible.
How many horsepower is that?
Yeah, well, I was about to say, I'm not the person to answer those questions. But I understand that industry has been waiting a long time for this. And so they're very excited and encouraged. But it's that kind of innovation that performance-based standards will actually support and allow for the market to respond. And I think the other element of the strategy kind of goes to that, which is focus on the performance and make it tech neutral. This should be, again, about the policy objective and not about a technology preference.
Yeah, kind of we heard that a lot in like SB 100, like the favoritism towards solar or wind. And, there's a whole breadbasket and you can't get there by itself. Kind of, I know the Air Resources Board does a lot of this, but is there anyone in the legislature kind of looking at this issue and kind of trying to take this on to kind of bridge the gap that you're talking about?
Oh, definitely. Well, I definitely want to say, Assembly Member Laura Friedman as chair of the Transportation Committee, and also Senator Lena Gonzalez as chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. Both of them have been leaders on this topic. Chair Friedman was very instrumental in leading the discussion last year for the $45 million for immediate emission reduction strategies. And Chair Gonzalez did an informational hearing, really trying to dig into kind of what are the issues, what are the barriers, what is it that we are currently doing, and what is it that we need to do in the future. And so they are very much on the forefront of this. I would also say the Problem Solvers Caucus with Assemblymember Cunningham, Senator Newman, Senator Hurtado. I'm going to stop naming people because I'm going to forget someone. But they have been very instrumental. I think Assemblymember Mays is there as well as well as others. But they have been instrumental, not just on this issue, but all issues, hence the name. But they're really digging into this, transportation, kind of clean transportation issue to make sure that we're putting all technologies on the table, and that, again, that we're looking for solutions that will give us meaningful and measurable benefits and outcomes today as well as tomorrow.
Okay, and now who's on the naughty list? Who are the members you want?
Oh, no. Cut. No, everyone is interested and everyone is doing their part. And we appreciate, honestly, the attention that the legislature is giving to this issue, along with the regulators at CEC and CARB, because it is, and of course the administration. I mean, the governor, frankly, he's been a good champion as well, looking at this holistically. Definitely focused on trying to accelerate the adoption of zero-emission vehicles. But again, he was also instrumental in providing the $45 million we talked about, as well as in his executive order that a lot of people talk about, with trying to get to, for heavy and medium duty trucks, get to electrification by 2045. He said he realized it would be hard for the goods movement industry to do that. So he put a caveat in there, which is where feasible. So, feasibility really needs to govern this as well. If it's not feasible to do it today, then let's do what is feasible today as we continue to work to what is feasible tomorrow. Yeah.
So, at the beginning of the year, we knew we were going to have a big budget surplus. It started in the 30s, now in the 60s. Now it's like $100 billion.
It's crazy. Take your bucket outside, Jared, because apparently it's raining money.
Is any of that going to be used towards, helping kind of the state infrastructure kind of transition to kind of this cleaner fuel standard we've just been talking about?
Well, we're hoping. There certainly is a lot of investment, again, going into electrification. But we are, CNGVC and other coalition partners in the low carbon, net negative carbon space are working on a $500 million budget allocation to promote low to net negative carbon fuels. We had a bill, AB 2797, by Assemblymember Cotty Petrie Norris, also a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, who that was really championing the use, incentives to increase the use and production of low carbon to net negative carbon fuels like renewable natural gas, propane, renewable propane, and other fuels. So unfortunately, the bill was held in the Assembly Appropriations Committee yesterday. Oh,
yes. Even with the power outage?
Yeah. Yes, they found a way to keep going on. But we also had a concurrent budget request that Assemblymember Petrie Norris is leading. So we're hoping to be able to get some traction and discussion on that. We also understand that, again, as I was talking about, the air districts that are in those stream non-attainment areas like South Coast, they have a budget ask. They've had a series, like a package of budget requests this year. One included extending the sunset for the Carl Moyer program, which provides a lot of incentive funding for our technology and others. But they also have a $600 million budget request to add on to that $45 million. Again, trying to get more resources into the district so they can transition and displace diesel trucks.
Well, that's unfortunate you got held in suspense yesterday.
I know.
Did you know it was coming? Did you have a feeling, or was it just... That's what I love about suspense is you actually really don't know until.
Yeah, you don't. You always go in hopeful, and you just never know what the outcome. Hence the suspense aspect of it.
That's great. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. We learned a lot.
Thank you.
Hopefully you can circle back with us sometime, kind of tell us about the progress you guys are making.
Would love to. Thanks so much, Jared.
Awesome.